In the endless void of outer space, we find two entities, dear listeners. Both of them have orange eyes, without pupils, and no discernible features or body. They begin to chat, and each of them have their own stylized word balloons to denote which of them is speaking. The first to speak has an orange word balloon, its outline red shifting into yellow. The second's word balloons are blue, its outline shifting from dark blue to light. Back on the old CrossGen message boards, we called these two the creator and the mentor, respectively. The creator starts their conversation by complaining that the universe is growing colder. It seeks an answer to this problem and invites its colleague to offer solutions. The mentor comments on how strange this is. It isn't like you to be so troubled. It wasn't always like this, the creator moans. Things used to be so exciting, so complex back in the beginning. But now things have gotten boring. The worlds grow colder, and glorious fields of battle are still and barren. The problem isn't just a lack in warriors, though. The creator recognizes that the very energies of everything is fading. This shouldn't be happening, and the first do nothing to prevent it. The first don't understand their place in the universe, the mentor says. They don't know what role they play. True, they need to be motivated. They need to get things going again. But revealing their hand, meaning the creators, would change the very nature of them. Well, why start with them? The mentor asks. There are many worlds open to you. Populated by many people, just walk among them. Add a small mark of passage to one on each world, you add your sigil to them, and open them to the power. Why only one? The creator asks. The number doesn't matter, the mentor replies, just offering a baseline suggestion. The smaller the number of them, the greater the burden on each sigil bearer. If there were many of them, they would allow someone else to do all the work. As with the first, the creator verbally nods. Still, you can see that it's hesitant to agree. Come, the mentor says. Drifting between the two sets of eyes is now a planet. Thick clouds, purple in color, obscure the surface of it. We can see what appear to be maybe a few islands in the sky, and the darker shapes that might be continents far below. Splitting the image of the world down the middle is a snapshot of life on it. We see a large island, vaguely corkscrew in shape, hanging in the sky. We can see green grass on it, as well as life. Human life. A city sprawls along the upper level, although we can see buildings that circle the island's core heading down. Two elevators that are tunneled through the rock are visible even at the distance we're at, hinting at just how large they are. Airships, built of wood and metal, sail towards the island. Both of them have multiple sails, at least 4. Below them, we can see a large ocean and some kind of landmass. Forest covers all of the land that we can see, and there is no sign of human life down there. Birds do circle through the sky, though, as the sun begins to set in the background. The creator does not recognize this world. Where are we? On the edge of the bleak zone, the mentor supplies, where everything falls away. This world is a delicate pearl, having already survived one cataclysm. Now, it is poised on the edge of an abyss. Its people live on the Sky Islands, a result of said cataclysm. They must balance the resources that are available to them with their own desire to possess more. A single sigil bearer would disrupt that balance, but two would preserve that tension. I like to imagine that the creator nods here. 2 siblings this time, I think. What will I tell them, these sigil bearers? Nothing, the mentor answers. Let their actions dictate the flare of the sigil. This will re-energize your warriors, bring them back to the fight, and as they fight, they'll create more conflict. The creator stops its fellow. You mean cross-generation? Yes. Conflict from conflict, energy from energy. Why, you could start a whole new chain of creation to stoke the cooling fires of the whole, the mentor says. You can almost hear the smile, in the creator's words. I can feel it growing warmer already. My name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown, episode 32.1 of Meridian, Family Matters. The broad structure of this scene and the majority of this dialogue is not something that is unique to Meridian. The creator and the mentor discussing their shared problems runs through all 4 of CrossGen's launch titles. The only unique part is which world they focus on, giving us a little pitch of what each world is like, establishing the setting for our particular comic, and giving us some broader hints at what is going on in the CrossGen universe. Over in Scion, the creator mentioned that its world, Avalon, was the first one that it made and how much it loved it. This is what earned the creator its handle on the CrossGen message boards. It took credit for creating the worlds. Pretty simple. But here the creator doesn't recognize this world, which we will eventually learn is named Demetria. Take note that the mentor is the one who introduces it, not to us, but to the creator, who doesn't even recognize this planet. This shows us that while the creator is powerful in a way beyond that of normal human life, it still isn't omniscient. It doesn't know everything. If this is God in the CrossGen universe, then this God has limitations. It also shows us something that the mentor already demonstrated, that it's got a plan. The mentor is the one who proposes the sigil idea to begin with, although it does sneakily give the creator credit for the thought there at the end of this scene. This is something that also happens in all 4 titles, but here the mentor wants Demetria specifically to have a sigil bearer, and not just one of them, but 2. This is despite the pair of them just saying that the more sigil bearers there are, the lazier they will end up being. So why does the mentor want this? We don't know yet. We won't know for quite some time, actually. So put a pin in that one, folks. It is going to pay off, but it's going to be a bit of a ride. Otherwise, we see the basic fantasy concept of Meridian. A long time ago, a cataclysm rocked the world and threw a bunch of islands into the sky. These floating rocks can now be mined to create other materials that float, allowing for skyships like we see here. But mining the islands means less of whatever it is that is keeping them afloat. The more that an island is mined, the greater the chance that it can fall. This is not an idea that is super unique for a fantasy story, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad story idea either. Floating cities as a trope date back to the 800s. And yes, I do mean 200 years before the year 1000. An island called Laputa shows up in Gulliver's Travels back in 1726, actually. Studio Ghibli fans would recognize Laputa as the name of the flying city in the film Castle in the Sky, known in Japan as Laputa, Castle in the Sky. A personal favorite of mine. I love all of Studio Ghibli's stuff, but Castle in the Sky just always stands out to me. Isaac Asimov, famed science fiction author, had a flying city in one of his stories. L. Frank Baum, the author of The Wizard of Oz, wrote a book called Sky Island. Of course, Star Wars had Cloud City in The Empire Strikes Back. Flash Gordon had Sky City. This concept even made its way into video games, with games like Skies of Arcadia, multiple Final Fantasy games, actually, Lunar Silver Star Story, Xenogears. Wow, lots of JRPGs now that I'm seeing them all in a row. Huh. So, while Meridian's setting is missing some kind of exciting, hot, unique pop culture hook, it does have a setting that stretches back literally hundreds of years of fantasy storytelling. These stories are fascinating, and humans have been interested in them for so long, and that is exactly the kind of storytelling trope that Mark Alessi wanted his comics to have with CrossGen. He wanted his company to tell stories that resonated with as much of humanity as possible, and so he drew inspiration from history. Finding this common thread, he conceived of a title set on a world with floating islands. It might not be a new idea, but it is a great setting. Within that context, it's clear that Meridian wasn't built to be a flash-in-the-pan, catch your attention now and hope to earn it later kind of comic book, which certainly exists. CrossGen wanted to start off slow here and build your confidence in their work as the story unfolded. I mentioned this in the first Scion episode, but I should bring it up here too, just in case you skipped Scion. The conversation between the creator and the mentor could be read as a very meta conversation between CrossGen's two founders, Mark Atiyeh and his cousin, Gina Villa. Atiyeh's desire to reinvigorate the comic market can be seen in the creator's need to restart the energies of the universe. If Atiyeh is the creator, then Villa is the mentor, making suggestions but not exactly driving the narrative. The first that they complain about could, metaphorically, mean Marvel and DC Comics as well. Looking at the American comic market in the late 90s and early 2000s, things weren't exactly super innovative, you know? Marvel and DC really felt like they were just recycling concepts over again. You had Marvel attempting the Heroes Reborn concept in 1997, which was restarting a corner of the Marvel Universe over, literally, and while those books did sell well, they were not artistically impressive or very fulfilling for the audience. We then had the Ultimate line of titles launched, I believe in 2000, which again was basically just a repeat of what had come before. It was Marvel going, do you like our greatest hits? Will you pay for them again? Rather than doing anything new, Marvel was literally just retelling stories that it had already told, just with a modern coat of paint and a modern price point. In Marvel's defense, they do attempt a lot of weird things in 2000 and 2001, for better or for worse. It's not all good, but I will still applaud it. I will always congratulate Marvel and or DC when they make a big move, even if it doesn't end up working out, because at least it's them trying to do something, right? So enough setup and background stuff. Let's get into this. Meridian was written by author Barbara Kesel, drawn by penciler Joshua Middleton, inked by Dexter Vines, and colored by Michael Atiyeh. A series of ships approach the floating island of Meridian. They are black, decorated with purple sandbags, trim, and railings. Their sails are a deep red, decorated with an ornamental C shape. Where the C starts and ends, the shape has two vertical, sharp lines. Above and below the C are two black stripes. Within its interior is a single black dot. As they close in, we see a brown bird dive through the air, approaching the camera. From off-page, someone says that there's 3 more ships than usual. We turn the page, and we meet Sephie. Sephie is a young woman, still a teenager. She is thin, with long blonde hair that's braided near her ears. Her eyes are a nice green, and she is dressed in a simple yellow sundress and sandals. Catador doesn't usually send so many, she says, shading her eyes with one hand and holding her skirt down in the back with the other. Their last trade run must have been fantastic, she says. A young man walks near her. Catador always wins when trading, no matter what it takes, he says. Sephie's eyes narrow, but not in anger, more in, annoyed acceptance. This feels like a conversation that they've had before, and she's kinda tired of it. She says his name, Chad. You know that Alon is my uncle. 2 men approach the kids from behind, and the camera spins around to look behind them all. We can see several wooden docks reaching out into the sky, waiting for the ships to dock. White buildings that look like they're made of stone or some kind of plaster stretches out to our left. Jad's father, John, tells him not to put Sephie in an awkward spot. Then he eyes the ships and leans towards his friend, Stu. You see that wobble? Those ships have been modified from their original float patterns. Stu nods. Sloppy work. Not ours. Of course not, Sephie says with a quiet smile. No ship leaves Meridian until it passes Father's first rule. And here she quotes him, make it perfect to the eye and sound to the touch. Can't you just hear him saying it? And suddenly she stops. Sephie is supposed to be somewhere right now. She takes off running, shouting that she'll see them at the reception. The men all wave at her as she takes off. As Sephie runs, she practices a few excuses for her father, before finally settling on the truth. She just forgot. Climbing up a stack of barrels, the girl climbs onto a nearby rooftop. As she does, she disturbs some form of small mammal which skitters away. "Sorry," she says, "but the high road is the fastest." And off she goes, heading towards her family's house on the hill. Before we move on, there's one really important thing that I haven't mentioned yet about Meridian. It does have narration. Over the course of this opening scene, the narrator talks about how sometimes you can just feel it when something is about to happen. And other times you can't. Those moments just slip by. Forever. They wish that they'd had some kind of warning that day, so they could have said goodbye. This text is presented to us in brownish boxes with a flowing black script. It looks like we're reading from someone's journal or diary. And given that the last bit of narration is delivered right over Sephie's head when we meet her, it is fairly safe to assume that it is Sephie doing the narrating. As we move on, we will see definitive proof, but when was this journal written? Who is reading it? Is this like old woman Sephie looking back over her youth? We don't know, but author Kesel uses the narration to do several cool storytelling tricks that I really appreciate. First off, everything about this opening sequence is bright and hopeful. Meridian is surrounded by blue sky and pillowy clouds. The grass is a bright green, with the occasional flower poking through it. What we can see of the town is clean, orderly, and beautiful, mingled with the green of living trees. This island looks perfect. But the narration tells us that something is going to happen. Something that will change Sephie's life forever. This contrast between the idyllic setting and the foreboding narration sets up a great tension that takes us into the rest of the story. This is then continued with Jad's dig in Catador and its ruthless trading practices. Furthermore, the majority of that foreboding passage happens on the page with the 4 panels of the Catadorian ships that are approaching Meridian. Kesel is tying the bad changes that are incoming with those ships, immediately predisposing us to be suspicious of Catador. Jad then gives us a reason why they are ruthless, and his father, John, adds further reason, noting that they've been messing with their float patterns. Everything that we're seeing about the Catadorians is a negative, and we will subconsciously carry that into the rest of the issue. Other than this really well-done, subtle writing, Kesel's main focus here is Sephie, and she is our heroine. That is how it should be. She is physically cute and attractive because most lead characters are, but we are also being told quite a bit about her. For example, her clothing is simple and comfortable. She isn't out here working, she is enjoying the afternoon, implying that she is either too young to work, or, more likely, as the minister's daughter, she doesn't have to yet. It also shows that she isn't really concerned with displays of her wealth, but she does still want to look good. Her hair is braided, which takes time and effort, and it implies that there is at least a little pride that she takes in her appearance. When she climbs onto the roof and flashes her panties at the camera, Kesel has said that they did this in order to demonstrate how carefree Sephie was at this time. No one was around her, she had a mission to accomplish, and she was willing to risk the embarrassment. This is contrasted to her holding down her skirt earlier when she knew that there were people around, so she is conscious of her surroundings, the risks around her, and to some degree her own sexuality. Sephie is in that awkward time of not quite a woman but no longer a girl kind of thing. She is also in the midst of a great personal change, and given what is about to happen, that theme is going to get real prevalent to Meridian. We also see that Sephie can be distracted by the idea of adventure. She forgot that she needed to get home after all. But she does choose to accept responsibility for being late along the way home, deciding to just tell her father the truth rather than lie to them. She has a strong moral code. Sephie is kind, sensitive, and mostly responsible, but she is also a bit reckless, which is a good mix for a lead character. Sephie approaches her home quickly, scrambling up the rope ladder that leads to her room, which sits atop a stone tower. These are the things that she'll always remember, her narration says. Her house, her room, her freedom. Climbing in through a window, we find 2 young women waiting for Sephie. They appear to be about her age, maybe a little bit older. One is a white girl wearing a simple pink dress with white blonde hair piled on top of her head. The other is a black girl wearing a blue dress with her hair done up in 2 knots on either side of her head. Sephie greets Phoebe and Zuka, calling out that she's home. Late again, Phoebe starts. Such a surprise, Zuka finishes. Yes, these two literally finish each other's sentences in the entire comic. They tease Sephie for running off, specifically teasing her for going to see Jed. Needing to get dressed in proper clothing, Sephie has slid halfway out of her dress at this point, but she does take a moment to turn and glare at the other two, stating that she did not. Which means that she absolutely did. Sephie's got a crush. Sephie's got a crush. Most of all, her narration resumes. She'll miss her father. Oh no. We then move to Dad's study, where we find a thick-set man with a thick beard, thick eyebrows, and long hair swept backwards. All of the hair on him is white, and he is wrapped in a comfortable, thick-looking blue coat and boots. The study that he's in is well furnished and warm, all soft colors as the sun fades in the windows in front of him. His face is tipped downward. This guy looks maybe concerned, maybe tired, maybe sad. It's hard to tell, given that we've never met him before, and it passes by in a flash, because the door opens behind him, and Sephie says that she's ready! She steps inside the room and spins, showing off the long red dress that she is wearing. Look at you! Turos, the Minister of Meridian, says, his blue eyes lighting up. My little squirrel has turned into a beautiful young woman. Oh, so like your mother. The pair hug. My sweet Sephie, she would be so proud of you. Sephie smiles, thanking him for the compliment. They both say their I love yous and then separate. Well, let's go show off for my little brother, shall we? Turos suggests. The hall that they wait in is large, but noticeably plain. Tall windows on either side allow for a lot of natural light to be let in. Tapestries hang from the walls, but there isn't much fancy decor here. A few people are scattered around, also waiting, but Turos beelines for an older woman. Is he here yet, Mira? He asks. She nods, right outside. Beside the large wooden door, a bald man wearing brown robes announces, Elon, Minister of Catador! Elon is Turos' opposite in almost every physical way. He is tall and thin, with mutton chops that highlight his prominent cheekbones. His hair is graying, but still a shade darker than his older brother's. His left eye is white, and he holds a cane in his right hand. He is also dressed in robes of gray and maroon, dark, very morose coloring. A golden decoration can be seen underneath the top of his, hem robe thing, hanging from a chain of what appears to be pearls. He scowls at the bald man who announced him. They know who I am, Regger. Stop barking like an overzealous herald. This guy is a real charmer, let me tell you. Turos rushes up to him, clapping him on the shoulders. Elon, he says warmly, how fares the land of Catador? Elon flinches. Turos, my arm. Turos nods. Well, forgive me my exuberance. My pride is overflowing today. Just look at our Sephie. He gestures to her, and she curtsies, greeting him. But Turos pulls his brother along, eager for the two of them to chat without business getting in the way. They step out into a balcony and summon 2 cups of wine. We can see just a portion of the city below them, lit with warm colors in the setting sun. The sky is just beginning to darken as the sun sets over the rim. Smoke can be seen rising up from the smokestacks of a few homes. Turos leans heavily on the railing, while Elon stands tall. Quaint as ever, he says. You know, Turos, I'll never understand it. Meridian is wealthy enough. You could raise these hovels and build something magnificent, yet you don't. Turos scoffs. Oh, not everyone has a taste for gilt and ornament. There is beauty in simplicity. Why, do you remember the view from the mountains? Now it's Elon's turn to huff. Ugh. I've become a civilized man, brother. Rocks and dirt are for children and peasants. I appreciate the art of a brilliant mind, not mindless nature. Well, agree to disagree then, Turo says, holding out his wine cup. To your health. Elan returns the toast, but asks, I've heard that you're unwell. Turos lifts the cup to his lips. Yes, but I've had my physicians keep it quiet. They can't seem to find a cause. In all honesty, I'm worried, but I'm not willing to send my ashes to the wind just yet. Looking into his cup, Elan asks if this turn has caused him to reconsider his proposal of combining Meridian and Catador. No, Turo says. Our people are too different. We are craftsmen, yours are merchants. It might be good for our purses, but it wouldn't be good for our souls. I must decline, Elan, again and always. Elan can't believe this. Damn your stubborn hide! Think, Turos! Is this passive backwater state what legacy you want for your child? This short-sightedness of yours is costing us both, and I won't allow it. You are forcing me to... As Elan's temper flares, a brown bird, vaguely resembling an eagle, swoops down upon the brothers. Elan panics at this and wildly swings his cup of wine at it, but Turos remains calm. He does put up his hands, but in more of a shielding motion, trying to shoo the bird away. Stop it, he says. It's just a bird. But this is not just a bird. The bird's eyes flare with bright orange energy. The glow seems to suffuse the entire animal and then go out from it. The energy hits and seems to pass through the brothers. A red and yellow symbol is left on Turos' chest, and he cries out. The same mark is left on Elan, but on his throat, at his Adam's apple. Elan holds up the wine bottle, studying his own reflection in it. He can see the mark clearly as it is glowing an angry red. Turos! That creature! What has it done? Only then does he notice that his brother has collapsed to the balcony. Turos? The door to the balcony slams open, and Elan instinctively covers his throat. Sephie, Regor, Mira, and a host of others rush out. Regor asks if Elan is okay, but he dismisses the idiot quickly. I'm fine, just swallowed some wine wrong. Help him! Help Turos! Sephie is immediately at her father's side, asking him not to go, begging him to stay. In her narration, she says that maybe if Papa hadn't been sick, he could have survived whatever it was that happened. It was just too much for him. To Sephie, as he slipped away, the world seemed to fall away from both of them. It's as if she was following him wherever he was going. She felt so awful that she thought she might die too. She rests her head on his chest, right on top of his sigil. And she says in her narration that it seemed like something touched her. She lifts her head now, and a slight yellow and red glow is beginning to appear on her forehead. She looks up, and she sees her father, but not his body. No, it's more like his spirit in brilliant orange energy floating above his body. It was as if all of his love, happiness, and everything good that he'd ever taught her just flowed into her, like it was all bundled up in one simple message. That no matter what, he would be with her. Watching his eyes shine with joy, she wanted that moment to last forever. But it didn't, and he was gone. Tears running down her cheeks, the sigil is now fully formed on Sephie's forehead. Mira drops down behind her. Oh, you poor dear. But it's Phoebe and Zuka who notice the sigil first. Phoebe has no idea what they're talking about when they point it out, and Mira doesn't really care right now. They can figure that out later. Leave your father with me, Sephie, she says, and then she asks the girls to take her to her room. No one's in the mood for a banquet now. Only a few feet away, Elan scowls. Speak for yourself, he mutters. Then he tells Regor that he needs a message delivered. When it's done, find him in Turos's... No. You'll find me in my study. We have spent the majority of this issue, up to this point, getting to know Sephie, our protagonist. But clearly, Kesel has now switched topics on us, shifting us over to our other protagonist, Sephie's uncle, Elon of Catador. And this is one of the things that I find incredibly fascinating about Meridian. All of CrossGen's books have a really intentional focus on their antagonists, right? Braun was a central part of Scion, as we saw over in that book, returning to challenge Ethan over and over again, getting issues dedicated to his specific story. But here in Meridian, Elon's story is just as important as Sephie's. Yes, he is an antagonist, challenging Sephie, threatening Meridian, but he isn't a one-off bad guy whose scheme will get stopped and then he drops off the comic map for 6 months to plot his revenge. He is going to be with us almost all the way to the end of Meridian. His story is just as important to the story of Meridian as Sephie is. Like she did with his niece earlier, Kesel has now demonstrated who Elon is to us. He wants money, power, influence, and he is willing to poison his brother to get it. Now, I will play devil's advocate for a moment here and say that maybe Elon didn't want to kill his brother. It is possible that Elon just wanted Turos to get sick enough to worry about his future, and thus, be more amenable to the idea of merging Meridian and Catador, securing a glorious, wealthy future for his daughter. Elon honestly had no way of knowing that the creator of the universe, maybe, was going to appear in the form of an eagle, turn into energy, and then brand them both with superpowers, kicking off a heart attack for poor old dad. Speaking of that, I want to point out how smart the use of that eagle is. So the comic opens with the discussion between the creator and the mentor, right? And then it flows into the Catadorian ships arriving at Meridian, and the first thing we see on that page, almost moving from the conversation to the city of Meridian, is the creator as that eagle. The creator actually soars through the rest of the comic. We can see it in the background of the page where Sephie sees the ships. We can see it follow Sephie when she runs home, heading towards her manor. It closes in on the balcony when Turos and Elon go outside, and then finally it dives at them. You can watch the creator look at the world, go, light bulb, and then follow down to Turos and Elon. I love this. It's super subtle. It's really clean, and it's really only noticeable if you're examining the comic for a podcast because you're a huge geek. I don't think that I ever remember noticing this back when the book was first published and I was reading it over and over and over again. And I've literally read this issue dozens of times. I made it a point to reread every issue of each CrossGen comic that I had when the new issue came out. So if issue, let's say, 8 of Meridian was going to come out, the day before, I would reread issues 1 through 7, and so on and so on. I believe up till issue 12, and then there were just too many books for me to keep up with. But I've read this book a lot, never noticed this before. Kesel has also gone out of her way to make Turos a very lovable character before she killed him off. He clearly loves Sephie and thinks the world of her. He appears, got a very limited view, but he appears to be kind to his staff, and he feels like a very informal kind of leader. In his discussion with Elon, we see that he understands the heart of Meridian, and he knows that the island of Catador is no good match for them. Sure, it would make them money, but it would also ruin everything that is beautiful about his home. For Turos, there is a simple joy in a life of nature, hard work, and family, and he's okay with that. He wants to pass that on to his daughter. For Elon, there appears to be only the acquisition of power and more money. When Turos shows off Sephie proudly, Elon doesn't appear to bat an eye, he doesn't compliment her, he doesn't even say hello to Sephie. As stated, Elon poisons his brother, too. There is no love between Elon and his brother, even if there is love from Turos and Sephie for him. That's not necessarily a two-way street. From an artistic perspective, Elon was clearly designed to be the physical opposite of Sephie and Turos. They are both shorter than him, for one thing, creating a visual contrast incredibly easily. Elan and Sephie are both thin, but that means that Elan's strong cheekbones give him a really skull-like vibe, while Sephie's face has soft, rounded cheeks. There's still a little bit of baby fat on there, highlighting her comparative youth. His one eye is cloudy, his mouth is always in a scowl, and thanks to our modern world's history, the mutton chops that he wears feel like a thing of the past, lending like an air of antiquity to him, even if it's only to us as an audience. Elan feels much older than he actually is, because remember, Turos is stated to be the older brother, and he clearly has the all-white hair, but he just looks like an off-brand Santa Claus compared to the, like, skeletal scarecrow that is Elan. Elan's design, honestly, is a study in contrast to Turos and Sephie, so big props to artist Joshua Middleton for nailing that part of the comic. The only other thing that I want to point out, because it creeped me out just a little bit, was when Sephie returned to her room and met with Phoebe and Zuka. I have no complaints about her friends, ? Maybe handmaidens? No, the problem I have with this sequence is when Sephie is clearly changing and we get a little bit of comic book fan service here. Now, I am cool with fan service in comics in general. I think that there is a place for it depending on the comic and its tone and the audience that the comic is aimed at. And admittedly, Meridian was aimed at a teenage or preteen audience and not the almost 40-year-old man that I am as of recording this, but seeing this teenager portrayed in an image that really feels like it was meant to be sexy feels wrong. The half-lidded eye, the half-exposed chest, this does not look like a girl who is getting teased by her close friends. She looks like somebody trying to seduce her partner. And while no, Sephie's age isn't stated, she really has been treated like a child this entire issue. This does demonstrate how close Phoebe is to Zuka, and she is clearly willing to change in front of them or with them in the room, implying a certain level of trust and closeness there, which is great. Their dialogue would indicate the same thing, as they clearly work in the house, but they also still tease Sephie for running all around Meridian, chasing one of the boys. Quote, "You're just like the stars, Sephie. We have to stay up late to see them too," end quote. I suppose that I should bring up just how well written Turos' death scene was as well. To me, even going into Meridian, it felt like such a foregone conclusion that Turos was going to die in this story from the jump, from the second they told me what the solicitation for this book was. The book clearly has Sephie as its main protagonist. She is the central figure on the cover. She was the lead sold in all of the previews and interviews. Turos as a character appears almost literally nowhere. In fantasy storytelling, dead parents aren't really a requirement, but they are a common story trope, as it frees up the protagonist to do what they like and agonize over their decisions, while having no one to go to for either confirmation or advice. Turos was always gonna die. It was just a matter of time, and we might as well get it out of the way now. Plus, I've read this comic before. Surely it wouldn't hit again, right? But it did. Oh, but it did. When Sephie narrates about feeling how much her father loved her, experiencing the joy that he felt as a parent towards her, man, I got choked up. I'm sure that some of that comes from me being older, and as such, my parents are also older, and the omnipresent fear and awareness that someday, sooner now than it would have been previously, they're gonna die, terrifies me. And I think that this scene kind of tapped into that a little bit for me, which makes it work even better. Talk about a universal storytelling element, right? Everybody's parents are going to die someday. That's how it works. But that doesn't mean it's great. It doesn't mean it's fun. It sucks. Okay, so from here on out, the narrative of this issue shifts to our other protagonist, Elan. In Turos' study, and I don't care what you say, Elan, that's Turos' study, we find him poring over his brother's paperwork. A knock at the door reveals that Reger's work is done. Elan drops a bag of money on the desk, dismissing the man casually. But Reger isn't satisfied. With Turos gone, and his loyalty now demonstrated, he wants a more visible role in their partnership. "You've been loyal," Elan quotes. So loyal that you would poison your own minister. So loyal that you would challenge your new one. Why, with such a loyal retainer at my side, I would certainly be... Elan suddenly stops. As he was speaking to Rhaegar and his temper was flaring, his sigil had begun to glow red. In his hands, the stack of papers began to just break down, turning into dust, disintegrating. As the remains of it fall through his fingers, Elan realizes what the sigil means. It means power. Then the real thought hits him. Then that means Sephie. Elan turns back to Rhaegar, hiding his excitement quickly. I have one more task for you. Then we can discuss loyalty. Eyes wide, Rhaegar whispers, Yes, Lord Minister. We then move to Sephie's bedroom. In a dream that night, she narrates, there was a strange feeling that she had. She had to find something, someone. There was a connection between her and this mystery thing and her father. And she had to find it fast, or she would lose something precious. As we're told this, we see a robed figure sneak into her room. Held in his hand is a short blade. He holds it up high, preparing to plunge it down, but in her dream she was suddenly enveloped in a blinding light. It exploded at her and then through her. And in reality, yellow light explodes out of her sigil, physically shoving her assailant back. Somehow, without even knowing what was going on, Sephie felt protected. She knew that she was safe. The attacker drops the knife. They are so stunned by this. This allows Elan to kick in the door, shouting for his niece, Sephie! Am I too late? He sets down his lantern and shouts to keep the assassin from talking. No more words! Elan then rushes in and tackles the man. He snatches up the dropped knife and stabs it into him. Sephie is horrified. Disheveled by all of the exertion, Elan looks at her. Are you all right, child? Did he hurt you? No, she says, still shocked. Uncle Elan, I know him. That's Rhaegar. Why would he... How could he... Elan stands, trying to compose himself. He tried to kill you because he was hired to do so. You're in danger if you stay here. He picks up her blanket and bundles her up. Listen to me. You're not safe. If one of the staff proved false, who else can you trust? Come with me, he says. I'll use every power in my possession to protect you. Crying quietly, Sephie leaves the room. Elan goes back for his lantern, but he doesn't pick it up. Instead, he touches the top of it and uses his newfound power to slightly destroy it. With the oil inside of it now leaking out, the fire spreads. Soon, Sephie's entire suite is burning. In her narration, she wished that she had thought to look back one more time, to see the way that it was. But in her memories, it looks the way that it used to. It's still beautiful. At the docks, Elan hurries Sephie into one of his ships. He orders his guards to protect her and make sure that she's comfortable. The head guard then asks about the minister's earlier orders, and Elan says to wait until morning. Once the fire is out, do it then. At Sephie and Tyros' house, we see the staff evacuating the building, including Mira, Phoebe, and Zuka. A young man named Hastian brings out the last group of survivors, but there was no sign of Sephie, he reports. Phoebe and Zuka are sure that she escaped. They don't know where she is, but they know that she's safe. No Tyros, no Sephie, no house on the hill, Mira says. It's like the heart's been torn out of Meridian. That heart flies away on a single Catadorian ship. Elan checks on his niece and sees that she's still awake. You should rest, child. Today has been doubly tragic, but you're safe now. It's over. Rest tonight, and tomorrow we can plot Meridian's course together. I had forgotten just how much stuff happens in the back of this issue. It already feels like a lot happened in the comic. Like, we've met so many people and we've learned so much about Meridian, and then we still get an assassination attempt. We get Elan staging the rescue. Good job with the acting there, Elan. Stealing Sephie away, and the beginning of a period of terror for the Meridian Knights. And we get all of that in only 9 pages. That is some economic as hell storytelling. Speaking of that assassination attempt, okay, any doubts that I had that Elan was wanting Turos sick and not dead are now gone. That stone-cold bastard was killing his brother 1 drop of poison at a time. What a piece of crap. And yet, what an absolute brilliant move on his part here. Setting up Rhaegar as a fall guy, being the one who saves Sephie, stealing her trust, if only for an evening, in order to get what he wants. Elan might be an absolute piece of
no swearing,
but he is also a smart one. From an antagonistic perspective, that is great. Elan is older than Sephie, he is used to maneuvering through the halls of political and social power on Catador, and he uses a bunch of those tricks here in this moment. Neither of them may know what the sigil is, or where it came from, or how they got it, but Elan quickly realizes that it means that they can do things that no one else can. If Sephie has access to the same power that he does, then she either needs to be used to his benefit, or she needs to be neutralized so she won't stand in his way, because she just became the single greatest threat to him getting control of Meridian. Now, he has her trust, and he was smart enough to get her out of the house quickly before her close ties to any of the rest of the staff made her doubt his motivations. I also really love the irony of him telling Sephie that he will use every power at his disposal to protect her, when he uses his newest, most dangerous power, the sigil, to set fire to her bedroom and childhood home before he kidnaps her in the night. I mean, rescuing her for her own good from potential assassins. We do get that snippet of a scene where the staff has evacuated and now watches their home and workplace burn. And this isn't just to indicate that the Meridian Knights don't know what happened to Sephie, right? As we move forward into the rest of Meridian, the fate of those characters is going to be a central part of the book's overall narrative. We have not seen the last of characters like Phoebe, Zuka, Mira, John, Jad, Hastian, and others. There's also that little bit of the Catadorian Guard asking Elan about that thing that they were ordered to do. Elan tells them to wait until morning, and come on, we get it. The old man is staging a coup here. They are clearly going to invade Meridian, and that was always the plan. Back at the beginning of this issue, Sephie noted that Catador has never sent 3 ships before. She assumes that it is goods to be traded, because maybe it was always goods to be traded before this particular trip. But this time, it's soldiers, it's weapons, it's personal transports. When Elan met with Turos, he told Turos that he was forcing him to act, that Elan wouldn't let his soft heart hold him back. He straight up said, "You are forcing me to act," before the creator so rudely interrupted him. I suspect that Elan was going to try to take over Meridian from the start, and the sigil just kind of helped him out a little bit. It's still a pretty solid opening issue. Comparing this single issue to Scion's single issue, which admittedly isn't fair as they are both very different titles, but you know, you kind of do it anyways. And comparing this issue to Scion's first issue, I do think that Scion's ending is a better hook. And clearly, Scion's medieval setting, but with energy swords and genetic manipulation, was just far more up my alley. I started covering CrossGen with Scion for a reason, and I did love the fight scene between Braun and Ethan at the end of that comic a lot. Meridian doesn't really have anything like that. The most exciting thing that happens, honestly, is the sigil getting handed out, which isn't really an action scene at all. I mean, I guess we did get Rhaegar's assassination attempt, but that was so generally not exciting that I clearly even, forgot about it. At least a little bit. Like, wow. Rhaegar, my dude, my bad, but you clearly did not make an impression. You are forgettable in every way. Huh. Now, that said, I think Meridian is probably the better written issue overall. I have less, like, overall world questions than I did with Scion, where I was just left wondering why things were happening the way that they were happening. I did actually go back and re-listen to the first episode of Scion again, just to kind of get me a baseline of what did I already cover regarding the CrossGen universe, especially like the creator and mentor stuff at the beginning of the issue. And I had what I still felt like were valid concerns and questions that Scion never addressed, and I don't really have any of that coming out of the first issue of Meridian. It's compelling, I like our characters, it's super pretty, and oh god, I've barely talked about the artwork at all. Penciler Joshua Middleton was a new name to the comic book industry at the time, found as part of CrossGen's call for talent both old and new to join their ranks. His style is very naturalistic, very soft, with a little bit of like a wobbly line to it. Nothing looks like a straight line, everything looks like it's got a slight curve. Middleton doesn't put a lot of details into his pages either, leaving lots of room for the colorist to really stretch his legs. While Middleton is perhaps my least favorite of CrossGen's launch artists, I can't knock the work that he did here or the tone that he set for the book, because all of that works. Y'all know that I like a more animated, more pointy, slightly more anime-inspired style to my artwork, which is something that I could find over on both Sigil and Scion at the time, so they were way more to my tastes out of the 4 launch titles. Middleton's artwork was just too soft and vague for my personal tastes, but I cannot deny that it looks good, that it works for this comic. One of the things that really makes those pencils pops are the colors by Michael Atiyeh, and they are gorgeous. Oh, they do look super blown out on the computer screen, so my apologies. But in person, this issue is just so pretty from start to finish. The bright green grass of Meridian, contrasted against the white buildings, is just so nice and comforting. When the sun sets later on in the issue, Atiyeh uses dark blue for a lot of his backgrounds, coloring Elan and Turos in warm oranges and yellows, the lighting coming from inside the building and the party that's going on. The color contrast is just so nicely balanced and so well done. It still looks warm and inviting, even though it happens at night. Oh. As the sun sets, Atiyeh even has the scene get darker, ending with the light finally disappearing when Turos dies. Things just go dark, both emotionally and literally, and that is a super well done coloring move. Now, the art team does not use a lot of shadows in order to create contrast in the artwork, instead preferring to let Atiyeh's colors add mood and tension, and it works really well. Inker Dexter Vines was already an industry veteran at this point. The profile provided for him at the end of this issue says that he has inked more issues of Wolverine than anyone else at the time, and I do think that experience shows here. He really leans into the animated, softer look that Middleton's pencils has, using a thicker line weight on the characters to make them stand out from the background and stuff like that. But he also never really finishes the more vague shapes that Middleton provides. So the whole book has this slightly ethereal, kind of foggy feel to it. It adds this unreal, fairy tale would probably be the best way to put it. It adds a fairy tale feeling to the book for me, that everything's a little bit like a dream. It's not. It is the reality of the world, but I like that tone that it's setting. Again, it makes it feel like it's skewing towards a younger audience just with the coloring and the inking. Vines does maintain Middleton's wobbly lines as well, so I think that he does a great job as an inker, given how little he has to do overall. Issue 1 of Meridian, otherwise, is just a solid flooping comic. It doesn't really feel special, I have to say that. It does not have an amazing hook, but it does have an interesting world with its floating islands. The basic cast of Sephie and Elan is promising. We've got youth versus age, naivete and hope versus bitterness and greed. They might be family, but could these two be more different? I don't think so. We also have the mystery of what Sephie's specific powers are here at the end of issue 1 to kind of carry us forward into the next issue. Sure, she, I said that she pushed Regger away, but the artwork doesn't really tell us what happened. Maybe the explosion of light from her forehead blinded him and he went, whoa, in surprise. Maybe she actually pushed him backwards, like that light was like a physical concussive wave. It's really hard to tell. She was sleeping at the time, so it's not like she had a conscious control over whatever it was that her sigil was doing, so I would say there's a good reason for that vagueness, but still, it makes the scene a little bit hard to read. We saw over in Scion that the sigil's use customizes to its particular wielder, so what could that mean for Sephie? Well, we'll find out next week, but not in Meridian. No. For the first time ever, I am covering the Meridian-specific details of CrossGen Chronicles Issue 1 for the podcast. The creation of the Sigil Bearers has gotten the attention of some powerful people, namely the race of godlike beings called the First. 6 of their number gathered to discuss this new development, and, take a little sneak peek at our protagonists. When they do, they will see that Sephie has a power all her own, similar to her uncle's, but fundamentally different. Join me in a week for Comic Book Breakdown episode 32.2 of Meridian, The Chronicles of Meridian. And before you go, I just wanted to do 2 quick little things here at the end because I almost forgot about them. These are not in the script. At the end of this issue, there is a single page of artwork by CrossGen's first associate penciler, Steve McNiven. If I remember correctly, McNiven was a high school teacher or an art teacher of some kind. Again, much like Middleton, he was found as part of CrossGen's exploration of new talent for the industry, and he did a pin-up image set within the world of Ceres, Mystics comic, to kind of show his stuff off a little bit. We will talk more about Steve McNiven later. I just wanted to say that if you're a fan of Steve McNiven's artwork, I believe this is his first published piece of work in a comic book. And it looks good. It doesn't look amazing, don't get me wrong, but it looks good. And then number 2, Breakdown has surpassed over 200 subscribers on YouTube! Hey! That's awesome! The last time I looked at it, we were at 203 subscribers, and I just want to say thank you everybody again and always for continuing to watch the show and listen to the show. I hope that you're looking forward to exploring the CrossGen universe for me. I've already got the next 2 episodes for Meridian written. As you can see with this particular episode, we did only cover 1 comic for this particular time, and that's because I wrote the episode as if it was the normal breakdown kind of thing, 2 comics per episode. And I got about 3/4 of the way through and I went, we're way past an hour mark at this point. I'm going to need to chop this down. This does frequently happen when I come back from a writing break. I always want to over-explain everything, and part of it is I love CrossGen so much that I want to point out all the neat little details and give you all the background elements and things like that. So for these first couple of issues, we are probably going to be a single comic per episode just to kind of set the baseline of this is what Meridian looks like. You'll get to see the images on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're listening on the podcast, hopefully I will do a decent job of the world building for you. And so moving forward, I'm hoping when we get to issues like 3, 4, 5, 6, you'll be comfortable in the world and I'll be comfortable enough in the world that we can get back on our normal pace. So for now, we're doing 1 comic per episode, but I've got all of those written. I just got to get them recorded and edited and up, and that should be good. I've already got an idea for another CrossGen-related episode that I'll probably drop into the feed if I can get it written on the side. So yeah, I love CrossGen. I love getting to share it with people, and I'm just glad to do it. So again, thank you everybody for listening. Thank you for watching if you're watching. We'll see you in a week. What else is there to say? We'll see you in a week. If you enjoyed this episode of Breakdown, please make sure to hit that like button, and if you are not subscribed to the show, then click on that as well. I love getting feedback, and I would really appreciate it if you did so. If you have any questions, concerns, or would like to suggest a comic or a series to me, Breakdown can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and on a variety of podcast platforms, with links in the description for this episode below, as well as the email cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Thank you for your time and attention.